Hey everybody, I have a video here for you today, and we are going to get off the Sphinx subject and head back to ancient America for a few videos. And I know a lot of you are enjoying this. It's history that you really aren't aware of or that familiar with. So I like making this. I learn a lot. And I just want to mention a couple things before I start. I'm kind of burnt on the Sphinx subject. It gets kind of exhausting defending yourself all the time. And all I'm doing is just trying to provide the best evidence. And I have had, and I've mentioned before, I get my most adamant when I think history has really failed you people. I've said that before and I'll say it again. So that's why I get really adamant, maybe a little arrogant, kind of a jerk sometimes. And I apologize for that, but I can't help it. 5 years of research, I'm going to defend what I found. And I've also had messages and comments, well, you're just anti-Graham Hancock. Well, that can't be further from the truth. I mentioned this in a video a long time ago. About 13, 14 years ago, I was really messed up. I was about as disconnected from reality as one can be. I came out to Vegas, freshly divorced. First time I had been away from my family. I was an angry, self-destructive person. But the first time I had been single since I was like 19 years old. And I got messed up. And when I finally decided to get my act together, I knew the only way I could do that was to find something that I enjoyed that would replace the time that I spent wrecking myself. And I found Fingerprints of the Gods, and I found something I really liked, and something that stimulated my brain. So my appreciation for Graham Hancock goes much deeper than ancient history, and that is a fact. And when I started looking into the Sphinx subject, I was a lion guy. And when I'm looking at comments from the lion people saying, of course it's a lion, well, those just were very similar to comments that I used to make. So I just invite you people to look into the subject, look into it hard, and see what you find out. But now getting back to ancient America, Aztalan State Park. This is in Wisconsin. I have had many messages from people in Wisconsin and comments just like I have from really all different parts of the United States on this Ancient America series. But I'm kind of familiar with Wisconsin. I grew up in Minnesota. They were our evil neighbors to the east. But I am familiar with Superior, Wisconsin. I used to do some carousing late night in my college years there. I have ridden go-karts near the Big Muskie near Hayward, Wisconsin. I have camped along the Brule River. Inner tube down the Apple River. I used to vacation near Balsam Lake in a previous lifetime. Wisconsin I'm very familiar with, but pretty much the western part of it. But we're going to go down to Aztalan State Park, and I think that's how it is pronounced. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways, but this is along the Crawfish River, and this is really the northernmost big city of these people that lived here about 1,000 years ago. The Mississippian culture, it is often called. But this is a look at the site. There was at least 45 mounds here when this place was discovered in the 1800s. And there was some stuff documented that really has been lost to time. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But I don't want to make this too long. But in the Crawfish River here, I was watching a documentary. And when the river's real low, you can see the ancient fish traps made with rocks. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but I found that kind of fascinating. They're still there. The river's low. You can still see them. But here is the park, pretty much 3 major mounds, all that is left. And there was some destruction, just like that stone pyramid in Ohio I was telling you about. Well, this is kind of a similar story here, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But here is the large earthen pyramid in steps, and when you look at this on ground level, and I'll show you in a second, it looks like 2 steps. And then when I looked at a few pics, there might be a lower base even here that has just been swallowed up by sedimentation and time. Now here you get a look at the step pyramid, and if you hear noise in the background, I apologize. They are blowing and vacuuming the grass out there. But this is one of the more impressive step pyramids coming from ancient America. Very good sized, and I'm sure we have lost a little bit of it through time. I found it very interesting reading that there was a layer of clay on the outside of this, in its original form. So these were not earthen pyramids to begin with. There was clay covering this, and these are very well built. Now, I've shown this video before, but I'm sure this pyramid at Aztalan looks a lot like the step pyramid up on the hill in Burlington, Wisconsin, that has been lost to time and progress and private land. But here is that video, shows you what it looks like in Burlington, Wisconsin a long time ago. We have a step pyramid up here, and probably the same culture and the same time building these. I will leave a few websites below, but here is an artist rendition how this looked along the Crawfish River. Now here is some excavation that was done about 70 years ago, and this is a round house, and what they would do is they would make a hard layer of clay, sink a post hole, put in some stones around it to reinforce it, and this is how their homes were held up, and that's how we would sink a fence post hole today, I guess. Here are copper pendants that was found, and they think this is of a face. Now, in reading about some of these mounds during the excavation work, I reported that some of these were found to have stone type cones, or there was like a apex of some sort of structure within the mound, and here is a pic of what was found at Aztalan, but this is a pic of the cone inside of the mound. Here is a pic of what they called the Pearl Princess. She was adorned with 3 belts and then something across her chest here that was made out of 800 shell beads that came from way far away. She was actually displayed, I believe, at the Milwaukee Museum or somewhere, and no longer on display today. They say her skeleton crumbled to dust. Is that what would happen to a skeleton in a museum? I found that story kind of weird. And it says, at the center of the mound, at a depth of 3.75 feet below the surrounding level, or about 9.75 feet below the assumed original summit of the mound, was a burial of a young woman, perhaps 20 to 25 years of age. The grave measured about 8 feet in length by 3 feet in width at the bottom, and there were stones over a lot of these. It says the body was placed on its back and extended at full length. It says the condition of the spinal column indicated that she had been at least slightly abnormal, and possibly her deformity may have been quite considerable. So I find that a little confusing, but how tall? She was 5 feet 7 inches tall. Now I have read reports that this princess was like 7 feet tall, that she was a giant. Well, 5 feet 7 inches tall is how tall she was. So some reports of large individuals found are true, and some reports are not. 5 feet 7 inches tall, but obviously a very important person, found with over 800 shell beads on her person, and she was obviously a royal of the highest magnitude. Here is that princess mound, and they found a large slab stone that was like an offering platform, and they found artifacts that were presented as offering. One of them came from Mount Shasta, California. Mount Shasta, California. Now here is a burial of a headless adult, and there was a headless male found with that princess. I just thought I would mention that. Here's a refuse pit with animal bones. Here is some work, some excavation that was found. It's described as a crematorium burial place. And here is the northeast mound. And I'm going to get back to this, and I haven't found a lot on this, and I think it's vague for a reason maybe, but a second stone pyramid, or what we can certainly call a stone pyramid, was found here. This wasn't a mound. This was actually a pyramid, and I'll get back to this in a second. It wasn't very big, but I'll show you what it looked like. Now, here is another website, and there is mound without attribution, I guess, outside of the park. Here are some. Here is the step pyramid, and when this city was thriving about 1,000 years ago, this stockade fence, well, it wasn't just a stockade fence. This was covered with a grass and clay mixture. So this was actually a wall, and remnants of this wall have been found, pieces of it throughout. Here's one more website, and I will just read. It says, Indian people lived at Aztalan between AD 900 and 1200. The village encompassed 20 acres and was well planned. The inhabitants planted corn, beans, and squash, hunted wild game and fish, and collected native plants for food. It says an elite group of individuals organized ceremonies and village life. Stockades surrounded the major portions of the village. Inside, 3 platform mounds and a natural knoll marked 4 corners of a large plaza. And it says the village was abandoned for reasons that remain a mystery. Now, I have stated the mound builders. Could they have been a branch of the Mayans? Well, actually, there's a theory out there that the Aztecs are a branch of these people that went south. Now, I didn't go into a lot of the artifacts, but there was stuff certainly found here. And if you have any good links, please provide them. Here is a look at what this place may have looked like with the additional mounds added in. Here is a look at what they theorize the homes look like based on what they found in the ground. Here is some stoneware. Here is some artifacts displayed, and I will leave a bunch of links below. And I'm going to be looking into further cultures that were here with these people. Do we have 2 different periods of time here? Do we have the Aztalan people building at a site that was already sacred, built by an earlier mysterious culture that we certainly seem to have hints from the United States? Well, a lot of questions are being answered. Some are just being developed more, but I find the series very fascinating. Now, here are some more interesting pics, and this is one of the websites I will leave below. This comes from the Wisconsin Historical Society, early pics, but this is a fascinating place. This was obviously very important, probably the northern branch of this society we call the Mississippian culture that were at Cahokia and some other places. Now let's go back to this northeast pyramidal mound. And that's what it was. It was a pyramid. It wasn't a mound. It was made of stone. Now, when this place was initially discovered in the early to mid 1800s, this drawing was done. This is a stone pyramid made with brick type cut stones, obviously. This wasn't very big, but it was 40 by 90. So it wasn't very tiny, that is for sure. This is where this story gets a little weird, because we had reports in the 1800s of settlers taking away bricks and using them in the roadways. And then we have had people come along and say, no, they're not talking about actual bricks. They're just talking about the clay and grass that was stuck along the stockade fence that had crumbled away. That's the bricks that these people were talking about a long time ago? No, I think they were bricks. I think they were in a pyramid that certainly sniffed of Mesoamerica. That is the second stone pyramid, what we can call a stone pyramid, that I found in this Ancient America series. And the one I talked about a while ago in Ohio, I may have found a pic or a drawing of what that stone pyramid may have looked like originally. And I have just been trying to find the location, and I can't. And it might seem to fit everything, but I just can't get any verification, and it's frustrating, and I might make a video about that in the upcoming days. Now, what did I find written on this? It has a mysterious stockade enclosure with an opening on top, and it is lined with white sand, and there's a fire pit. Well, the mysterious thing to me is we have a stone pyramid made with, looks like bricks, in Wisconsin, coming from 1,000 years ago. The mysterious thing to me is why people write about the weird stockade fence on top when we have a stone pyramid that echoes something coming from the Mayans or something coming from Mesoamerica. That is a mystery to me, clearly. And would people have hauled away fragments of clay and grass to improve roads? It describes wagonfuls of bricks being hauled away from this site. I think it came from here. I'm reporting lost history. Why doesn't anybody write of this? I'm baffled. This is ancient Aztalan, and I'm sure I said it a few different ways throughout this video. This is the main mound. They say a chief a long time ago lived on top of here. This is facing directly east. This was literally 1,000 years ago, the house of the rising sun. And this little village here that you can barely make out, Well, this seemed to be the very first settlement in Wisconsin, or one of the very first ones. It is barely a village today, and this, a long time ago, Aztalan, Wisconsin, came within one vote of being the state capital of Wisconsin. But there are a few other regions I find in this area interesting. There are a few other things under the ground here. There is a large mound right here that is a natural feature, obviously, but when I read into this site, one of the remarks was they were so impressed how these people 1,000 years ago used the natural terrain and used it in symbolistic fashion. Here we have lake mills and a deep history of ancient American history. We have a legend coming from Rock Lake of a pyramid under the water. I can neither verify or debunk that. I just wanted to mention that. There are other sites I was going to mention in this video, but this got way too long. This comes from the land of beer and cheese, Wisconsin. Hope you thought this was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.